We start this hour with breaking news at the White House and a post from President Donald Trump. He says he spoke with President Vladimir Putin. Let's get to CBS News White House reporter Aaron Navarro, who's live for us in Washington. And Aaron, what can you tell us about this?
Yeah, Mugo, in this post from President Trump, he says that he and President Putin of Russia talked for an hour and 15 minutes, and that Putin told President Trump that he'd, quote, very strongly have to respond to Ukraine's drone attacks from the weekend, where they essentially smuggled in drones hiding on semi-trucks that damaged Russian aircraft and bombers. Trump also added, quote, it was a good conversation, but not a conversation that will lead to immediate peace. This also comes days after Ukraine and Russian officials met in Istanbul to kind of get going on peace talks, though there was no immediate result from that, despite an initial agreement to exchange prisoners. Also in his post and readout of his call with Putin, President Trump said that Putin suggested that he would get involved in the talks with Iran to get a nuclear deal to stop the nuclear proliferation of the country. And President Trump added that he, quote, will need a definite answer from Iran in a very short period of time.
And the president also is making news in a post about trade tensions with China. What else do we know about that one?
Yeah, we're still waiting to see when that call with President Xi of China will happen. That's been a long kind of sticking point when it comes to the president's, quote, reciprocal tariffs, and he continued to criticize China as they continued their negotiation process. If you remember, a couple weeks ago, there was an initial agreement in Geneva that China says the U.S. violated, the U.S. says China has violated, so that already seems to a rocky start.
And Aaron, big picture wise here, we know there is clearly a ticking clock to the tariff story. The White House has set a deadline for other countries to make deals with them. But what is that deadline and how are negotiations going so far? Because it doesn't seem like they're giving us a list of other countries that they have come to an agreement with.
Yeah, so far it's just the United Kingdom that there's a definite agreement with. And we heard from the White House yesterday that they sent a letter essentially nudging these countries to get going on negotiations. We did see a statement from the U.S. Trade Representative indicating that talks with the European Union representative went well today, but it still remains that July 9th is that deadline when that 90-day pause on his, quote, reciprocal tariffs is taken off, essentially, and that is when we'll see a lot of activity. So there's definitely a ticking clock in the next couple of weeks for the White House to reach deals with these countries, as they have kind of touted and argued is the purpose behind this threat of, quote, reciprocal tariffs.
And just to be clear, Aaron, the White House has not mentioned other countries that they're potentially talking to right now. I know at some point they said 30 countries, but no specific nation at this point, besides the UK you mentioned.
Right. Around the time that the UK was announced, there was talk of India, South Korea, Japan as potential deals on the horizon. But since then, we have not heard much activity.
Wow. So I guess it's a wait and see at this point. And, you talked about, President Trump talking to Putin, and it almost kind of seemed like it was a good conversation, but then he didn't mention in his post there when he said Putin says he's going to respond to that attack from Ukraine. He didn't say anything in response to that in that post, whether it was a, hey, maybe don't do that or be careful. Because for a long time now, we've seen him post into social media talking about how so many lives are being destroyed, so many people dead because of this war. But nothing from the White House as to that conversation and maybe saying, hey, let's stop with the drone attacks and all of that. Nothing from the president on that.
Yeah, nothing. We have not heard from him over the weekend when it comes to those Ukrainian drone strikes. It's an interesting moment, too, because you've seen in recent weeks President Trump publicly criticize the Russian president, saying that he should end this war soon. While we do know that Secretary of State Rubio has been in talks with at least Turkish officials in reaction to the strikes and the ongoing peace talks, President Trump himself has not yet responded.
Okay, so another situation that we'll have to wait and see for. Aaron Navarro, thank you so much for your time today. We know that was a situation, some breaking news that happened right there, and you joined us as quickly as possible and gave us some detailed information. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much.